audio check.
Now, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And now, if you're not completely satisfied, a few words from better than ever in your neighborhood. You'll be amazed.
Everything Pharmacy.
Hey guys, and welcome to RX Radio, a podcast about everything pharmacy. On this episode, we are going to get the take of a critical care pharmacy resident, Dr. Dominic Curry. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana. I lived there until about high school, moved down here, went to college in Orlando at University of Central Florida where I did my undergrad. Then I went on to the University of Florida at the Orlando campus where I completed my PharmD before I started my residency in Orlando as well. The way I got into pharmacy, kind of a back way into it. I was just in undergrad. I needed a job to pay for my new car that I got, and I just kind of applied everywhere. And this is back before you needed a license to be a technician. So CVS kind of just hired me and put me into the pharmacy, and I kind of just took off from there.
Nice.
Before it was all said and done, I did about 8 years of work in the community setting before I decided to move into a hospital. And then the other thing I feel like I should mention, because you might hear them in the background, I'm a proud owner of 6 birds that, drive us crazy sometimes, but most of the time they just make us laugh. So.
Okay. What kind of birds are they again?
They're like little songbirds, like they're called finches. They're Australian finches. They're like, we started with 2. There was a male and a female, but now after witnessing the miracle of life we have 6. Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I must say that was an excellent tell me about yourself. Like the listeners, you like rewind that and take notes because that is exactly how you do it. That was an excellent intro for yourself, sir. So,
I learned from the best.
Why did you want to do a residency, especially being someone that did community for, 8 years? You said, why did you want to do a residency?
Well, first thing that I think I should say kind of about myself is I'm a huge believer in moving with purpose and knowing your personal why and like what you want to accomplish out of the things that you do in your life. So I knew early on that, what I wanted to get out of my career and what I wanted to be able to do was to just have as big an impact as possible. And there's many ways you can have an impact. But one of the most important things is that whatever you're doing, you're interested in and you're engaged in. So, you'll want to do the things that you need to do in order to have that impact. So, during school, I found that clinical pharmacy, hospital pharmacy is something that just really kind of piqued my interest and really engaged me. And that kind of got reinforced on my rotations because I did a pretty heavy slate of clinical rotations. Mm-hmm. And I kind of saw the pharmacist role in direct patient care, as well as like their role in the organizational guidelines and protocols and things like that. And I just saw that, those are the things that I'm really interested in. And those are the things I feel like I could be good at. So I just kind of knew that that's where I wanted to go.
So that's a real higher level, practice. Whereas you're not, obviously you'll definitely be dealing with patient to patient care, but that's, what you're looking at for your future is definitely like at a higher, more higher level view of pharmacy practice, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's, like I said, there's a lot of ways to have impact. It's also, you have the direct patient care where you have that individual impact when you're on daily rounds, for instance. Mm-hmm. But there's also, when you're residency trained and you become a specialist in an area, you have the opportunity to be involved in like state and national organizations that put out like the guidelines that we use to make our clinical decisions. And the people that are involved in developing those guidelines are, physicians and pharmacists and people that are experts in this field. And if you become an expert like that, then you can have the opportunity to be someone that can really affect millions of patients, not just that, individual patient you see on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah. And being a critical care pharmacy resident, I'm going to go ahead and name that being a successful pharmacy resident, especially after doing a PGY2. What kind of advice do you have for students that are in school now that want to prepare to do a residency? What's going to be important for them to be a good candidate?
Well, I think something really that it kind of sounds like simple, but I don't think it's something that a lot of people really focus on. And that's, why do you want to do a residency? What is your actual mindset? Like, what do you want to get out of a residency? Is it that you just don't want to work in community? Is it that you really, enjoy patient care? Is it, you really want to get the best out of your degree or whatever it is? But once you can define clearly why you want to do a residency, then that will lead to all the things that you'll need to do to become successful. So as a student, it's going to be really hard to know like what specific job that you want. Well, you can know, the things you want to get out of your career, and you can prepare yourself for all the potential options and paths that could lead you down. So, as a student, the one thing you have to realize is when you're a resident, you're going to be faced with, just a multitude of situations and experiences that you're unprepared for, that you're going to be uncomfortable in. And the more things you can do to diversify your experiences as a student, the more experience you're going to have to draw upon when you're in those scenarios as a resident. So that means like doing research and being involved in leadership organizations where you're in charge of people and you're in charge of meeting deadlines and you have to work with others, and also handling, your school responsibilities and work responsibilities. And as much as you can do to develop time management skills and organization skills, the better off you're going to be. So it's kind of just like, if you know that you want to go down the residency path, first of all, you have to be able to get a residency, right? And to be able to get a residency, you need to be an attractive candidate. To be an attractive candidate, you need to have a pretty well-developed CV and pretty well-developed purpose of like why you're going into a residency. Yeah. So you have to kind of take that step back at the higher level picture of, you and your purpose, and then think about the how and the what. How am I going to do? How am I going to prepare myself to achieve my why, and what will that lead to? And then if you can think about it in that direction, sort of starting with the core purpose, and the things that will come up as opportunities, you just have to ask yourself, okay, will this help me achieve my purpose? So, if you have an opportunity to run for a leadership position, you're probably pretty busy with school. You might think that you don't have enough time to do it, or, you don't want to take on the responsibility, or you may not feel prepared, but that's all your mind kind of getting in the way. But if you know at the core, I know this is uncomfortable for me and this will make me better, then you'll do it. And that's kind of what I did during school, during pharmacy school, because going into pharmacy school, I'm going to make a disclaimer. In undergrad, I was not an involved person. I think I went to one pre-pharm society meeting so that I could say that I was in the pre-pharm society. Yeah. So I didn't really have
resume check.
I didn't really have a good mindset in undergrad. But then I came into pharmacy school and I surrounded myself with great leaders and people that I looked up to that pushed me into my, uncomfortable areas. Mm-hmm. And I started to see that, okay, by doing those things that I'm maybe not as great at, or maybe not think that I'm as great at, it's making me better. And if you do things the right way in that fashion, like you do it in a way to make yourself better, and that's to say, fill out your CV, for instance. Yeah. Then while you're in that position, if you're thinking about, I'm doing this as much as I can to make myself better, you're going to be successful because you're going to do the things that should be done for you to be successful, because you know that by you doing a good job, you're going to be better. And by you being better, you're going to be more prepared to be successful going forwards. But if you're going the other direction, like you're using it as more of a what, like, okay, this position looks good on my CV. Once you're in that position, whether you are successful or not, it's still on your CV. Yeah. So if that's your only motivation, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to grow from that experience, and you're not going to be a good resident down the line. Yeah. I mean, especially when it comes really down to it, if you need to speak to being in that position or being in that role, it's going to be very difficult if you really only did it for that what. Right. Exactly. And, the more that you can kind of get out of the CV building mindset, which I think it seems like it's the same thing. It seems like if I do a lot of things, then I will look good and I'll get a residency, versus if I do things with a purpose, it's like a subtle difference, but as someone that has seen both scenarios now as a PGY2, like going through the recruitment process last year where we were interviewing candidates and looking at people that look the same on paper, but when you talk to them, you can tell who actually put effort into what they did and who did it as, more of a CV builder, and you can tell that which one's going to be more successful.
Yeah.
You can just, I get that. You can get, and I'm not even an experienced recruiter, let alone a residency director that's interviewed hundreds or, thousands of candidates in the past.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, if you're doing things the right way, it will work out for you. And that's kind of what I've always been taught, just growing up from my parents, and, doing things the right way, even when people aren't looking.
Yeah.
That's how you get better. That's how you will be better. That's how, when you step into that uncomfortable scenario, you have the right thought processes and habits and things that will make you successful, where you don't have to know how to do everything. You'll have the right process to get you to that point to be able to do everything.
Yeah, definitely. What should people expect to get out of a residency? There are some people that I'm sure that just recently started one, or is doing one next year or in the next 4 years. But, before we get into more specifics about your particular field, what should people expect out of a residency?
I'd say you should. I mean, I think all residencies are kind of different, but at the end of the day, you should expect to be sharpened. No matter where you do your residency, if it's a great one or not so established one or whatever, it's going to be extremely difficult. But that saying that pressure turns coal into diamonds, and I think that is definitely an apt analogy to residency, because really what it is they say that a residency is about 3 to 5 years of experience. 1 year of residency gives you about 3 to 5 years of hospital experience. And, that's not because it just looks good on the paper. It's because you're doing so much during a residency, so many things and opportunities you have to do during a residency that you don't get if you just say graduated and went right to working in the hospital. It's because since, you're not getting paid the full salary as a pharmacist, you are able to kind of just be in a training ground. So I'm residents in general, you're there learning, but you have an expert as your safety net that's teaching you.
Yeah.
So you can really, go and put yourself out there into patient care, for instance, and have a little bit more confidence in learning what you're doing because you have someone there guiding you. If you don't do a residency, you're just thrown out there and you're expected to start working as a pharmacist right away. You don't have people that have the time or the resources to put into you for you to be better individually. You're just kind of expected to be out there. So by being a resident, you have a whole program's worth of resources at your disposal that's specifically designed to make you a great pharmacist, to make you the best pharmacist that you can be, to make you a independent practicing clinician.
Yeah.
So at the end of the residency, you're just during the residency, you're gonna be I don't know anything, because each day you're faced with a new scenario that you don't know anything about.
Yeah.
But when I finished my first year and I started working with the new PGY ones that came in, I noticed a huge difference from when I first started to just that 1 year of residency to how much more I know, how many little things that you couldn't really think of, oh, I know that, but when you're faced with that scenario, you realize, wow, I do know that. I do know this. I'm a lot better than I was when I started. And that kind of gives you that motivation and that kind of energy to sort of push through the second year.
Yeah. You kind of, that progress kind of motivates you to keep going, because you did see that there's you didn't get to the end of oh, that sucked, I didn't learn anything. It's one of those oh, that was super worth it. Can't wait for the next one type of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Cool. And what's your day-to-day like during your residency? What's expected of you, every day, every month, whatever. What's that like?
Well, it kind of varies, first year to second year. So I'll talk a little bit about the first year. So when you're coming in as a first year, you don't really know anything. If you don't use it, you lose it. And for someone to actually know things, you might learn a bunch during your rotations, but people really need repetition before they actually remember everything. So when you first start out as a resident, you don't know anything. It's been a few months since you've actually been in rotations. There might be students that are in the rotation block at your hospital that might know more than you when you first start, and you don't feel very good about that, but it's just kind of the truth. So at the beginning, there's not a lot expected of you. What's expected of you is that, on a day-to-day basis, you come in and you do your best to take care of your patients, and you put patients first. Because first year is more about getting experience in taking care of an individual patient, direct patient care.
Okay.
So, at my institution, every rotation is we're a teaching hospital, so every rotation has a medical team that rounds, and we're a part of that team. So each day you come in early enough to work up your patients and make sure that you're able to, know what's going on with them and make interventions on them and make sure that they're getting the best care possible. Well, at the same time, your preceptor is not really expecting you to be great at it.
Mm-hmm.
They expect you to put in the effort. They expect you to come in and be prepared and be at the level that you're supposed to be at.
Yeah.
So that's kind of your morning. You come in, you work up the patients, you go on rounds, you talk about the patients with your preceptor afterwards. And then in the afternoon, there's usually topic discussions, there's meetings, there's a lot of things that are more focused on like the longitudinal aspect of the residency.
Mm-hmm.
So most residencies have very similar longitudinal projects. You'll have a research project, you'll have an MUE, a medication use evaluation, where you're kind of looking at the process of a specific drug and how it's used. You'll have CE presentations that you'll give. It takes, a lot of work. And then throughout each rotation, you'll have different, responsibilities of, specifically like a patient case presentation or a journal club. So the afternoons are kind of focused around, reviewing the patients in the morning and working on the longitudinal type stuff. And that's kind of how it goes throughout the entire year. Now, as the year goes on, you learn more and more is expected of you. You're expected to be a little bit more independent. You round kind of on your own. And you start to take ownership of the patients as you go. And then by the time you get to second year, PGY2, I think we'll probably get into it a bit later, but, when you become a PGY2, you're really training to be like a clinical specialist.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're a clinical specialist, you're an expert in the field that you did your PGY2 in. So your knowledge and your expertise is valued on like committees and different parts of the hospital leadership where they make the decisions of, we have a hospital specific order set or a protocol or a guideline, and we want to make sure we have pharmacy represented there. So they'll look to the clinical specialist to take their expertise and put it into that committee. So you have a lot more leadership and higher level patient care things that you have to do as a clinician. And part of PGY2 is teaching you how to do that. So, as a PGY2, I'm kind of expected to be pretty good at patient care. When I round on my own from the start and I have the whole service on my own. That's kind of the expectation. Mm-hmm. And so the rest of the day is like going to meetings and being on this committee and, presenting at that committee and, bringing my MUE recommendations that I had from last year and presenting it and bringing it through the ladder of the organization to get it, accepted and approved. And it's a lot more managerial type stuff.
Yeah.
And then
like administrative stuff.
Like administrative stuff, because at the ideal position for a clinical specialist is sort of, at a teaching hospital where, you don't have as much order verification responsibilities. So it's kind of like depends on the hospital and the practice model.
Yeah.
So like at Orlando Health, where I do my residency, the clinical pharmacists round in the morning and they verify the orders on their patients. But at the same time, there's a staff pharmacist that covers the floors behind them. So in the afternoons, when there's still orders being put in, the staff pharmacists take over that order verification responsibility, so the clinician can go and do all that administrative stuff and work on research and work on those guidelines and work on all those things that really everyone can't do because everyone's not an expert in that area.
Yeah.
So they kind of teach you more. They focus more on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So being that you just went through a bunch of stuff on, day to day and how many different things that you can be doing on a residency, what are some unexpected things that came up in terms of doing a residency, whether it be specifically yours or what you found in general? Like, what are some unexpected things that you really didn't foresee coming?
I think there's good unexpected and maybe not so good unexpected. So I think really, for me, maybe it's just as me individually, but trying to gauge how long things take and trying to plan out, to manage your time wisely and figure out, how much time you need to actually give something. Mm-hmm. I definitely underestimated that a lot, especially with the CE presentations, because it's an hour-long presentation and, the expectation level is higher and you're supposed to be at the end of your research for your CE presentation, the expert in that field. So you don't realize how much effort actually goes into the things that pharmacists do. Like you go, like for instance, as a student, you go and you see, oh, there's a presentation they just gave, and you think, oh, they just know that, and they show up and give it. It's like, no, that was a month of preparation.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think just trying to gauge out like how much time it takes to read one article and be able to break it down and be able to determine whether that was a good or bad article. Yeah, it takes hours. Like you think, oh, it's just 6 pages, I can read that pretty quick, but to really like absorb it and understand it, it takes way longer. So that was kind of a shock in the beginning.
Yeah.
Also, like unexpectedly, I guess maybe kind of expected, but unexpected was just, the difference when you're a pharmacist and you verify an order, it's got your name on it. It's not like when you're a student and you're looking at it and you're thinking it's good or bad. It's like the weight of verifying an order is kind of scary in the beginning. Like, even verifying routine orders like fluids, you're just like so freaked out that you're going to do something wrong.
Yeah.
And make sure everything's right. And that was definitely an adjustment, just kind of remembering that even though you're a resident, you don't feel like it, you are a pharmacist.
Yeah.
And you do have a license, and it is on the line.
That and even in community, that last bit there about that final verification of how like that pressure and like that's on you. That's something that you hear about your responsibility as a pharmacist. Is obviously greater when you're out practicing, things like that. But you don't truly know. You can't even explain that. You don't truly know how terrifying it is to verify something. Like until you have to do it, and then like until that moment right after, like you verified, you're like, oh my god, like was that right? Like that type of that feeling is just one of those things that you'll never be able. It's going to come at some point, but you'll never truly feel that feeling until you're there. So
and it's like a healthy fear, because it makes you focus more and to make sure you don't make a mistake, and that's. I think it's good that it's like that, but like you said, you just don't know until you get there. But one other thing I'd say that was probably unexpected in a good way, and again, this might be like, residency specific, but just the way that my preceptors treated me, they treated me more like a colleague. And, you kind of get in the mode as a student to be very professional and be very formal all the time and make sure you address everyone the proper way. And, you're trying to impress everyone. But, as a resident, they treat me like an equal. And it's like, they're just like, they kind of welcome me into their quote unquote family, and they kind of, I just felt like taken care of. Like, I felt like they're there to make me better. And, I wasn't expecting that, to feel like just part of it. And I think that made me want to try harder for them.
Definitely. It gets you bought in.
Yeah. And you can just tell that their reason for having me as a resident was for the right reason. It was to make me better. It wasn't for any other reasons that people may hear about, so that's something to look for, I think, when you're looking for residencies. But, I think that's also why I wanted to stay, because I didn't mention in my intro, but I did a 9-month student block at this hospital. Then I did my PGY1 at this hospital, and then I stayed on for PGY2.
Yeah.
So, the thing that's kept me there is just the environment and the culture of learning. I didn't really know how that was going to be until I got into it. So it was a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I hope there's a residency director out there listening to this, and, we'll take that note down about how to properly keep and retain your pharmacists. Treat them like colleagues, man. Treat them like colleagues.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, we all are on the same team here, and everyone has different teaching styles. I'm not going to say that some people aren't a little harder than others, but I still feel at the end of it, they're being hard on me for the right reason,
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, as I was saying, students should keep their purpose in mind. I feel like preceptors that are teaching residents and students should keep the purpose in mind too, which is that, they're there to learn, they're not there for you to have power over them or whatever,
Yeah. So I wanted to do I guess kind of like a pro con pro type of thing, but you've really done a great job at explaining all the great things that, and benefits that pharmacists get from doing a residency. So maybe you want to talk about little things that are not so positive, like anything that you think could be better, or any opportunities you see just in general with residencies, or yours specifically. It's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you have to be willing to sacrifice if you really want to get the most out of it. You're going to see, for instance, if you do a residency and you have friends that don't do a residency, they're going to have more free time than you. They're going to have more money than you. They're going to be doing more fun things than you.
Yeah.
So, I think everybody kind of expects that, when you go into a residency, but I don't know if everybody's really ready for that. When you come in and, you come off of work, but you're not off of work. Like when I worked, as a technician, I would work a 12-hour shift, and it was long and it was hard and stressful. But when that time ended, it was over.
Yeah.
In residency, you're never done until the end of the year because of those longitudinal projects. So even when you have free time, your mind is just like thinking that you're wasting time because there's always something that you have to do. So you're just kind of like in a cave for a while. I mean, if there's people that are really good at time management, and I started to get better at this near the end of the year, where when you're planning out, your schedule and your day, and you have to carve out free time. Because if you don't specifically plan for an hour to yourself, then you will run out because you haven't given yourself that time to where you can stop doing what, projects you're working on. Yeah. Because you'll have to use all that time to get things done. So I think just the amount of effort that goes into it, and just how you're kind of always on. You don't really get to turn off until it's over. That's kind of the biggest con. But to me, I'm kind of a glutton for punishment in that sense, because I know that if it's hard, to me it's worth it. I'm attracted to a challenge. I'm attracted to I mean, if I took like a month off during rotations and it was good for about a week, and then it's hard for me to enjoy that, because I feel like I'm stagnating. Like if you're not getting better, you're getting worse, so
it's staying on that constant grind.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's another mindset thing to it, like you got to set your mind to that when you start, that, you can't expect to have free time. And if you do have free time, it's unexpected and it's great. But there's some
people that love that. There's some people that love to turn off and, want that time, but there's others, like I think you and I, that we're always on, and we're always doing something, and that's just like our happy place, even though like we're stressed, we're not sleeping well, like all that kind of stuff, but that's like kind of like our happy place.
Yeah. And I don't want to make it seem like it's impossible. I have a co-resident that she's really efficient and like great at time management during the week, and because of that, she allows herself to have Saturday and Sunday where she's not working a lot. Yeah. But that requires, she specifically sets that out to give herself that time, because she needs that time. Yeah. So I'm not that way. I'm not that good. Like I kind of use all my time during the week, and then I always have things I need to do still. Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely possible, but it's just like, it's not going to be given to you. You have to kind of make it possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So you clearly thought, being where you're at now, you clearly thought a PGY2 was going to be, the best thing for you in your career. What about the person that's not sure, or, how can you better help someone make that decision of whether they should be going for a PGY2 or not?
This is again, like where it comes back to knowing like what you want to accomplish, like what your purpose is, because any decision, I talk about this, people that know me know that I talk about this all the time, because it's like something that I believe to be like a universal truth. And I just feel like I understand it, and I want other people to get it, because I feel like it's made my life so much easier when I understood this one point, which is like, when it comes to making a decision, stay with me. I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, but it's going to come back to my point. Okay. So, when you're making a decision, there's different parts of your brain, right? So there's the gut feeling, like emotional part of your brain. It's like sometimes you just have a feeling and you feel like it's right, but you can't really verbalize why. Yeah. That's sort of the limbic system that evolved, prior to the neocortex and the clinical reasoning part of our brains. Yeah. And if you think about a gut feeling that you've had in the past, whether you know the reason why it's good or it's bad, if you don't follow that gut feeling, you're going to regret it, even if it turns out bad, because that was your instinct. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, that's sort of the why part of the brain. That's like the central purpose is derived from your like instinctual gut feeling. The other part of your brain that people most of the time use to make decisions, the rational part of the brain, the pro-con part of the brain, that's the neocortex. That's the what part of the brain. That's all the details. That's like what's good, what's bad. Let me make a list. Let me make a pro-con list. Let me look at this. Let me look at that. And you find yourself, at least I do, when I try to make a decision using that part of my brain, I just get caught in all the details. You know, I get caught in like, well, these are the good things for this side, but these are the good things for that side. Which side's better? But if you can find a way to just trust the gut feeling part of your brain, you will always make the right decision. Even if it doesn't turn out well, you won't regret it, and you'll get something out of it because you'll feel like you followed the instinct.
Yeah.
So if you know your why of doing a residency and your why of your career, the decision for a PGY2 is not really a decision. So for instance, for me, I knew that I wanted to have a huge impact. So I knew that in order to do that, I needed to be the best pharmacist I could possibly be in terms of, you know, what I'm interested in. If I'm interested in clinical pharmacy, I'm interested in giving, you know, amazing direct patient care, but also being able to impact on a larger scale by being involved in the committees that develop the guidelines, the protocols, and being involved in the organizations. Then I need to be an expert. For me to be an expert, I need to do PGY2. So it wasn't even like a decision. It was just like, for me to accomplish my why, this has to happen. This is just the natural progression. So if you start with your why, the decision is made for you. There's other things too, like as far as impacting, you know, being able to educate, not just students, but being able to educate the medical team. You know, when you're, you can educate in any form or format. You know, you educate all the time on Facebook. You know, but for me to be able to educate all members of the multidisciplinary team, I have more opportunities to do that if I'm an expert in my area. So as a PGY2 trained clinical pharmacist, I've noticed that their role is as much of like giving interventions on patient care as it is explaining to the medical residents and the physicians, you know, why we're doing the specific things that we do. Because you don't think about, at the end of the day, a physician is an expert in what they're trained to be, which is a diagnostician. And they know treatments, and they have a general idea of like the treatment that they should use. But all the intricacies of medication management, that's us. You know, pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, dosing, renal function, like all those things, they don't even come into their mind.
Yeah.
So that's what we're there for, to give them that education. So that education part of it is another way that I can have an impact on patient care. And to have more opportunities to do education, I need to do PGY2.
Yeah.
So you can see, like, if I'm thinking always about what my why is, like the thing that I'm going to do next, I just ask myself, you know, will that help me accomplish my why? Yeah. If there's any Game of Thrones, I don't know if you're a Game of Thrones fan, but if there's any Game of Thrones fans out there, there may be. You know, Peter Baelish has a quote in the show, you know, where he's talking about the decisions he makes on the show, and he's like, I have one center purpose in my mind, that's to sit on the Iron Throne, and every time I make a decision, I think, will it help me accomplish that? That's exactly what you should do in your real life. You know, like, you have to, as a student, figure out your why. Everything else after that will fall into place if you move with that in your mind. Yeah.
Well, I was going to to close, I was going to ask you, you know, your best advice to a pharmacy student and a pharmacist starting this year, but I'm pretty confident you covered that through this episode. So I'm going to throw you a curveball here, and I'm going to ask you to give your best advice to the practicing clinician, pharmacy, nurse, physician in general, your best general advice for the practicing clinician.
I would say, you know, I'm a little biased in my viewpoint right now because I'm a resident.
Yeah.
But just remember that, you know, in a hospital, there's always people that are on different levels of, you know, expertise and learning. And I'm someone that kind of falls in this trap too also. But always remember that to do what's best for the patient, sometimes you have to put up with someone that doesn't know as much as you, and it's your job to help them learn.
Yeah.
You know, and you can either be frustrated that they don't know what you know, or you can be someone that helps them learn and helps them get better. So just always remember that at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, and we get frustrated with each other. And, you know, sometimes we're stressed in the moment, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to do what's best for the patient from our own point of view. And, just keep that in mind that no one's trying to step on anyone's toes. No one's trying to take over anyone's scope, but we're all just working for the betterment of the patient. I think sometimes, in the heat of the moment, people kind of forget that.
Yeah, that's true.
They let their egos come into it.
I mean, we see that all the time, even in, people in the community setting at different physician offices and things like that. And that's excellent advice. Well, Dom, what's the best way that people can reach you in case they have further questions about everything that you've given them today?
I'm not really, I'm not really big on social media, so I think probably email would be the best way to go.
Okay.
So my email is just my name, Dominic.Curry@gmail.com. And I check that pretty frequently. And I have it on my phone, and I'm always on there anyway, checking my residency email. So if anyone ever wants to reach out to me and ask me a question, I'm always there to answer it. Like, I'm always there to help anyone that's kind of coming along. So just send me an email, and you have to also remember I'm a resident, so it may not be like a 5-minute response time, but keep in mind that I will answer.
Well, I'll definitely link that up too in the description of the podcast. Well, Dom, thank you so much for taking this call with me. It's so much value out of this episode, and I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, man. It was a lot of fun.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. I really hope you guys enjoyed that interview. I hope it was as insightful to you as it was to me. Please leave me a comment on Instagram or on iTunes. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Any feedback is going to be greatly appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe. And until next time, see you over the counter.
Pharmacist.